The colony of Rael was not meant for war. It was a world of green valleys, quiet oceans, and towers of crystal stone that reflected the sunlight like jewels. Its people, the Kyrians, were gentle traders and builders, known across the smaller, star lanes for their craftwork and peaceful nature. Their cities were places of music and open markets, not fortresses. For centuries, they had lived under the assumption that peace would last, that the galaxy was too vast for trouble to reach them. But trouble came anyway. The first sign was a shadow across the sky. Unmarked ships dropping from orbit, their hulls scarred with the black paint of raiders. Within hours, communication relays were destroyed, spaceports were taken, and the outlying villages burned. The Kyrians had few soldiers, and those they had wore ceremonial armor more suited for parades than for real battles. Against disciplined mercenaries, they were helpless. In the great council chamber of Riel's capital, fear spread like wildfire. Elders argued over what to do. Some said surrender might spare lives. Others said they must fight with what little they had. But there was one voice that suggested something different: send a plea. The Kyrians had long traded with neighboring systems. They had contacts in the Orelli Republic, the Varen League, and even whispers of dealings with the Shal Dominion. These were powers of real strength, with war fleets and armies that could crush the raiders like insects. Surely, if they heard the cries of a small and peaceful colony, one of them would come. So the council sent the message. It was short, desperate, and honest. It spoke of invasion, of helpless civilians, of children hiding in underground shelters while raiders looted their homes. It was transmitted across every major channel, boosted through every relay they could reach. The Kyrians waited, their eyes turning to the sky every night, hoping to see a friendly fleet arrive. But no one came. Days turned to a week. The raiders tightened their hold, draining supplies and demanding tribute. In hidden bunkers, the Kyrians listened for any reply. The Orelli Republic ignored them. The Varen League sent only a cold statement that their forces were occupied elsewhere. The Shal Dominion didn't bother to answer at all. The galaxy, vast and proud, turned its back on them. Hope was fading when the signal arrived. It was not wrapped in the elegant codes of the great empires. It did not bear the crest of a republic or league. It was raw, rough, and direct, translated into basic galactic speech with blunt edges. This is Earth Vessel Resolute. We received your call. Coordinates confirmed. Hold on, we're coming. The Ari council fell into stunned silence. The name hung in the air like smoke. Earth. Few Kyrians had ever seen a human, but the stories about them traveled far. They came from a place most called a death world, a planet of raging storms, violent beasts, and diseases that would kill other species in hours. Their gravity was crushing, their weather unpredictable, and their survival was said to be impossible by civilized standards, and yet somehow humans thrived there. The galaxy whispered about them with both awe and fear. They were called Deathworlders, not as a compliment, but as a warning. They were said to be unpredictable, stubborn, and too quick to fight. No one sought their aid unless they had no other choice. And now the Kyrians had no other choice. In the bunker chambers, leaders debated fiercely. Some shouted that humans would only bring more chaos. Others said that if no one else had answered, then perhaps chaos was better than surrender. Meanwhile, outside the chambers, ordinary citizens whispered in fear. The raiders were cruel, yes, but at least they were familiar. Humans were something else, an unknown that had always been spoken of in hushed tones. But the decision was not really theirs to make. The signal was clear. The humans were already on their way. On the fourth night after the message, the skies lit up. Raider patrols scrambled as a single starship descended from orbit. It was not sleek and shining like a Varen cruiser. It was rough-edged, armored with patchwork plating, its surface scarred from battles past. Its engines burned with an almost defiant roar, and its landing shook the ground like thunder. The Kyrians watched from hidden windows as the vessel lowered onto the outskirts of their capital. Dust swirled, shadows stretched, and the first ramp lowered with a hiss of steam. Figures stepped out. They were not tall and elegant like the Aurelie. They were not adorned in ceremonial robes like the Shal. They were human. Their bodies carried scars. Their eyes were sharp. Their clothes were practical armor pieced together for survival rather than ceremony. They carried weapons that looked well used, and their movements were steady, as if they had walked into danger 100 times before. At their head was a woman with cropped black hair and a calm, almost weary expression. She scanned the horizon, as though measuring the land itself for threats, then turned to the nearest Kyrian who dared step forward. "You sent a call," she said simply. "We're here to help." The words struck like a spark in dry grass. Relief and fear mingled in equal measure. The council members arrived soon after, robes trailing, faces pale. They tried to speak in careful, diplomatic tones, but the human commander cut through their words with blunt questions. "How many civilians are left? Where are your defenses? What do the raiders have in orbit?" The Kyrians struggled to answer. They were not used to war, not used to the sharp edge of survival that humans carried so easily, but they answered as best they could. And as they spoke, the humans listened, not with disdain but with focus. The Kyrians realized something strange then. The humans were not afraid. Where their own people had curled into despair, these strangers stood tall. Where the raiders' presence had crushed spirits, the humans seemed to thrive on the challenge. It was as though they had walked straight from the heart of a storm and found nothing unusual about it. That night, as the humans began setting up defenses, rumors spread through the colony. Some said the humans were reckless. Others said they were saviors. But everyone agreed on one thing. When no one else answered their cry, the Deathworlders came, and the fate of Ryle had already begun to change. The next morning, the Kyrian capital awoke to the strange sounds of human activity. Their streets, usually filled with the music of vendors and the soft hum of crystal-powered tools, now echoed with the metallic clatter of human machines. The newcomers wasted no time. They dragged heavy crates out of their ship, unfolded strange black structures that clicked together like bones, and set up defenses in the open square. Children peeked out from doorways, eyes wide with curiosity and fear. They had never seen beings like this before. Humans looked both fragile and unyielding. Their skin bore scars and strange markings, their muscles hardened from living on a world that never gave them rest. They were not graceful like the Aurelie ambassadors, nor shining like the Veyron soldiers shown in holofilms. They looked rough, but every movement had purpose. At the center of this effort was the human commander, the woman with the sharp eyes. Her name, the Kyrians learned, was Captain Morgan Hale. She moved with steady authority, barking short orders that her crew followed, without hesitation. When Kyrian counselors approached, she greeted them politely but without ceremony. "We're not diplomats," she told them. "We're soldiers. You asked for help. We'll help. But you must listen. If you do not, we cannot protect you." Council members shifted nervously. They were not used to being spoken to in such direct terms. Still, fear of the raiders outweighed pride. They agreed to listen. The first task was to understand the enemy. The Kyrians explained what they knew. A raider fleet of 6 ships orbited above, each bristling with weapons scavenged from old wars. On the ground, there were over 1,000 mercenaries, spread across the capital and surrounding villages. They controlled supply lines and forced the Kyrians to deliver food and resources daily. Morgan listened in silence, her expression dark. Then she turned to her soldiers. "We'll hit their ground forces first," she said. "Break their grip. Without ground control, they'll struggle to hold orbit." Her words shocked the council. "You cannot be serious," Elder Rhinell exclaimed. "You are barely 24 fighters. They have 1,000. Morgan met his gaze. "They have numbers. We have will, and will wins battles," the Kyrians murmured, among themselves, frightened by such reckless confidence. But the humans did not waver. They began teaching Kyrians how to build barricades, how to dig trenches, how to spot weak points in patrol routes. What had been quiet, defeated streets soon rang with the sound of hammering and the digging of tools. Among the civilians, opinions were divided. Some distrusted the humans deeply. They whispered that Deathworlders were unpredictable, dangerous, and only cared for their own. Others watched the humans work tirelessly and felt sparks of hope for the first time since the invasion began. One Kyrian child, a girl named Lyra, wandered close to the humans' camp. She was thin, her fur-lined tunic ragged from hiding in basements. She stared at a group of humans cleaning their weapons. One of them, a tall man with sandy hair, noticed her. Instead of scaring her off, he reached into his pack and pulled out a square of strange dried food. "Here," he said gently, offering it. Lyra hesitated, then took it. The taste was strange, salty and smoky but warm. She smiled shyly. That small kindness spread through her family, then through her street, softening suspicion. Slowly, the image of the Deathworlders began to shift. By the third day, the raiders noticed the change. Their patrols reported unusual activity, barricades appearing, civilians refusing tribute. The raider captain, a scarred brute named Vec, laughed when he heard. "Let them try," he snarled. "These weaklings couldn't hold a stick without trembling. Whoever's behind this will crush them." His laughter did not last long. That night, under the cover of darkness, the humans launched their first strike. They moved like shadows. Through the narrow streets, their armor painted with soot to blend with the night. Morgan led them herself, every step silent. The Kyrians had expected a grand assault, something loud and dramatic. Instead, the humans struck like hunters. A raider outpost near the food storage depot was the first to fall. 2 guards slumped silently, caught before they could cry out. Explosives planted on fuel tanks erupted in controlled bursts, lighting the sky as the depot collapsed. By the time reinforcements arrived, the humans were gone, leaving only chaos behind. The Kyrians who watched from hiding places gasped. They had never seen such precision, such ruthlessness paired with discipline. It was not wild fury as the stories had told. It was careful, calculated, and frighteningly effective. The next day, the raiders stormed the capital square, furious at the loss. They beat those who refused tribute, shouted threats, and dragged young workers away as punishment. Fear nearly returned, until the humans stepped forward. Morgan and her squad appeared at the edge of the square, weapons raised. She did not shout. She did not threaten. She simply said, "Enough." The raiders laughed at first. Then the humans opened fire. What followed was chaos. The Kyrians ducked for cover as bullets and plasma filled the air. The raiders, used to terrified villagers, were shocked by the ferocity of the human attack. Where one fell, another human pushed forward, covering their comrade. They did not retreat. They did not falter. Even when wounded, they fought on, teeth, gritted determination burning in their eyes. Within minutes, the square was theirs. The surviving raiders fled, leaving behind weapons and supplies. For the first time since the invasion began, the Kyrian capital stood free, if only for a moment. That evening, the city gathered in hushed wonder. The humans had done what the Kyrians thought impossible. They had faced the raiders head-on and won. Though the fight had been small compared to the larger war, the impact was enormous. Hope spread like a rising tide. Morgan addressed the council once more. "This is only the beginning. The raiders will return, angrier than before, but we've shown them you're not helpless. Stand with us and we'll push them back." Her words were simple, but they carried weight. The Kyrians looked at one another, fear still heavy in their eyes, but something else stirring too: courage. For generations, they had been traders, builders, singers. Now for the first time, they began to imagine themselves as something more. And it was the Deathworlders who had lit that flame. That night, as stars filled the sky, young Lyra whispered to her mother, "The humans are not monsters. They are fire. And fire once lit was very hard to put out." The dawn that followed was tense and uneasy. The Kyrians woke to silence, but it was not the calm silence of peace. It was the silence before a storm. Everyone in the capital knew the raiders would not let their humiliation pass. They would strike back, harder than before. Captain Morgan Hale did not waste time waiting. She ordered her squad to reinforce the barricades, strengthen the watchtowers, and spread scouts into the surrounding streets. The Kyrians worked alongside them, though. Their hands shook and their steps faltered. Fear was heavy. But the memory of the humans' victory in the square gave them enough courage to try. Children carried stones to pile into makeshift walls. Merchants lent their carts to block roads. Even the council elders, unused to physical labor, helped move supplies. The humans gave short instructions, direct, clear, never wasting words. And slowly, a fragile defense began to form. Above the planet, the raider fleet stirred. On the bridge of the lead ship, Captain Vec raged. Reports of destroyed depots and lost men filled his ears, and the story of the humans' arrival spread. Like wildfire. Deathworlders, Vec spat, slamming his fist against the console. Of all the cursed vermin to show up, it had to be them. He knew their reputation. He had heard the tales of their stubbornness, their refusal to die quietly. But he had never fought them himself. That was about to change. Send a full company, Vec ordered. Burn their barricades, break their spirit. I want the humans dragged through the streets for all to see. His officers nodded grimly. Within the hour, shuttles rained down from orbit carrying scores of armored mercenaries. The Kyrian lookouts were the first to see them. A cry echoed from the rooftops. They're coming! Panic rippled through the city, but the humans stood, ready. Morgan raised her rifle and spoke loudly enough for the Kyrians nearby to hear. Stay behind cover, do not break ranks, let them come to us. The Kyrians clutched whatever weapons they had been given, mostly farming tools, reinforced, with scraps of metal. They were not soldiers, they were bakers, traders, singers. But with humans beside them, they forced themselves to hold their ground. The raiders advanced in waves, their armor gleaming in the morning sun. They expected the Kyrians to scatter as usual, but instead, they met fire. The humans opened first. Sharp bursts echoed across the square as bullets streaked into the enemy lines. Explosions followed, crafted from crude but effective charges the humans had placed overnight. Barricades held firm as raiders slammed into them, only to be met with human blades and close-range fire. The Kyrians watched in awe. The humans moved like storm winds, fast, precise, never hesitating. When one fell, another dragged them to safety. When ammo ran low, they switched to knives and clubs without fear. Every action carried one message: we do not break. For the Kyrians, it was different. Fear clawed at their chests, but when they saw the humans standing firm, something shifted inside them. A young blacksmith named Errol swung his hammer with desperate strength, knocking a raider to the ground. A singer named Illyra, who had never touched a weapon in her life, shouted warnings from the barricades, guiding fighters where they were needed most. Even the children hurled stones from rooftops, distracting raiders just long enough for humans to strike. The battle was chaos. Smoke filled the streets, cries of pain mixed with shouts of defiance. At the heart of it all, Morgan fought with a calm ferocity. Her commands cut through the noise, giving shape to the chaos. Left flank, hold. Push on the right. Do not let them breach the line. The Kyrians followed her voice like a beacon. Where once they had been scattered, now they fought with surprising unity. But the raiders were relentless. They surged again and again, throwing bodies against the barricades. Slowly, the defenses cracked. A section of wall collapsed, and raiders poured through. Panic flared, but before it could spread, a human soldier named Ortiz rushed forward. He held the gap alone for precious seconds, his weapon blazing until it jammed. With a roar, he swung it like a club, driving back attackers, until his comrades reinforced him. The Kyrians who witnessed this never forgot it. It was the moment they understood what made humans different. Not their weapons, not their strength, but their refusal to yield even when outnumbered and outmatched. By midday, the square was a battlefield of ash and ruin. The raiders, bloodied and furious, finally retreated to regroup. The humans did not chase. Instead, they checked their wounded, patched their armor, and rebuilt the barricades as though nothing unusual had happened. The Kyrians stood stunned. Their own people had been hurt, yes, but far fewer than expected. They had survived a direct assault. Against all odds, they had stood side by side with the Deathworlders and endured. One elder approached Morgan, his voice trembling. How did you do this? You are so few, and yet you faced so many. Morgan wiped soot from her face and gave a small, weary smile. We've lived our whole lives fighting things bigger than us. On our world, if you run, you die. So you learn to stand. Her words sank deep into the Kyrians' hearts. For the first time, they began to see the humans not as monsters, but as teachers. That night, fires burned across the ruined streets. Families huddled together, whispering about the battle. Children repeated the names of the humans who had fought bravely, as though turning them into legends already. In the humans' camp, Lyra approached again, the little girl who had once tasted their strange food. She tugged at Morgan's sleeve, timidly. "Did we really win?" she asked. Morgan knelt down, her eyes soft despite her battle-hardened face. "We held. That's a kind of winning. And we'll do it again tomorrow if we must." Lyra smiled for the first time in many weeks. She believed her. But above the planet, in the Raider flagship, Captain Vex's rage grew. He had underestimated the humans, and now his men whispered fearfully about them. Deathworlders. The word was spreading. "Enough of this," Vex growled. "No more games. Next time we crush them with everything we have." His officers exchanged uneasy glances. They had all heard the same stories Vex dismissed. The stories of humans who fought until their last breath, who turned hopeless battles into victories through sheer will. And now, they had seen those stories come alive. The next clash, they knew would decide the fate of Rael, and both sides were preparing for it. Before, the Kyrians had seen themselves as helpless, weak traders caught in a storm too great for them to withstand. But after fighting side by side with the humans, they no longer looked at themselves the same way. They had stood against the raiders and survived. Their wounds ached, their city still smoldered, yet beneath the exhaustion there was something new. Pride. Captain Morgan Hale noticed the change at once. The way the Kyrians walked was different now, less bowed, more steady. When her squad asked for volunteers to help repair barricades or scout the outskirts, dozens stepped forward. Even the council, once frozen in endless debates, began listening to Morgan's advice without complaint. The humans, in turn, treated the Kyrians with a quiet respect. They did not mock their inexperience or scoff at their clumsy hands. Instead, they showed them how to hold tools properly, how to reinforce walls, how to stay calm under fire. Every lesson was simple, practical, and delivered without arrogance. The days that followed were filled with hard work. Streets once filled with music now rang with the sound of hammering and drills. Humans and Kyrians worked shoulder to shoulder, lifting stone blocks, patching holes, and stringing lines of crude traps across alleyways. At first, the Kyrians struggled to keep pace. They tired quickly under the heavy loads, their bodies not used to such strain. But the humans encouraged them with short nods and steady words. "You're stronger than you think," one soldier told a young craftsman. And when the craftsman finished his task, his chest swelled with pride. Children ran errands carrying water for the workers. Elders prepared food, sharing their best recipes with the humans. The meals were strange to human taste, but they ate gratefully, never refusing a bite. In return, the humans shared dried rations from their packs, salty, tough, but sustaining. The Kyrians laughed at the odd flavor, and soon the act of sharing meals became a small ritual that pulled the two groups closer. One evening, as the twin moons of Rael rose over the battered city, a group of humans sat by a campfire with several Kyrians. The air was cool, the flames casting soft light on their faces. For the first time since the invasion began, there was laughter. Sergeant Ortiz, the soldier who had held the barricade during the battle, showed the Kyrians how to play a simple human card game. The Kyrians struggled with the rules at first, mixing up the numbers and symbols, but soon they caught on. The fire echoed with cheers and playful groans of defeat. A Kyrian singer named Illyra began humming softly, her voice rising like silver smoke. Curious, the humans asked her to sing more. She hesitated, then gave them a song of her people, a song of rivers and skies, of home and longing. When she finished, the camp fell silent. Then one of the humans, a quiet man named Drew, began to sing in return. His voice was rough but steady, carrying an old Earth tune about holding on in dark times. The two voices, alien and human, wove together under the stars. For a moment there were no raiders, no fear, no war, only the bond of shared song. The council watched these changes with cautious eyes. Elder Rhinel, once the strongest voice of doubt, now admitted in private that the humans had given the colony something no other power had ever offered. Hope, perhaps, he whispered to his peers. The galaxy calls them Deathworlders not because they bring death, but because they refuse to surrender to it. The younger Kyrians embraced the humans most eagerly. They followed them like apprentices, learning how to fight, how to move quietly, how to read the sky for signs of enemy ships. The humans taught patiently, though always reminding them of the dangers. Morgan, in particular, spent long hours with the Kyrian scouts. She showed them how to mark safe paths, how to recognize raider patrols, how to signal silently. Her calm manner inspired confidence, and soon the scouts began to feel like true protectors rather than frightened civilians. But bonding was not only about training, it was also about stories. Around fires and work tables, humans told tales of Earth, of storms that could flatten cities, animals that hunted in packs, and oceans that swallowed ships whole. The Kyrians listened with wide eyes, horrified yet fascinated. "How did you survive such a world?" one farmer asked. Morgan's answer was simple. "We adapted, we endured, and we learned to help one another, because alone, no one survives." The Kyrians fell silent, realizing that this, more than strength or weapons, was the human's true gift. Endurance through unity. The bond between the two peoples deepened in quiet moments too. One afternoon, young Lyra followed a human mechanic into the remains of a workshop. She watched as he repaired a broken water pump, his fingers moving with steady precision. "Why help us?" she asked innocently. "We are strangers." The mechanic paused, wiping grease from his hands. "Because someone helped us once when we were weak. Now it's our turn." Lyra thought about that long after he left. To her, the humans were no longer frightening legends. They were protectors, friends, even heroes. But the shadow of danger never left. Scouts reported that the raiders were regrouping, their numbers growing. Captain Vec was furious, and his threats echoed across captured villages. Every day, more mercenaries gathered. The final blow was coming, and both humans and Kyrians knew it. Instead of breaking, the colony prepared. Together, barricades grew stronger, traps more clever, watchtowers taller. Kyrians who had never lifted a weapon now trained with spears and rifles under human guidance. Songs of sorrow turned into chants of defiance. One night, as the city worked, Morgan stood on the council balcony watching. Sergeant Ortiz joined her. "They're changing," he said quietly. Morgan nodded. They were never weak. They just needed someone to remind them. Below them, the Kyrians hammered wood and stone into defenses, their voices rising in unison. It was not the sound of a conquered people anymore. It was the sound of a people ready to fight for their home. When dawn came again, the raider fleet was visible above the sky, their ships like dark scars across the stars. Fear rippled through the colony, but it did not crush them this time. Humans and Kyrians stood side by side, weapons ready, hearts steady. In that moment, the Kyrians understood something profound. The Deathworlders were not saviors who had come to rescue them. They were partners who had shown them what they could become, and together, they would face whatever came next. The raider fleet descended, their ships blotting out the stars like dark clouds before a storm. Engines roared, shaking the ground. From the flagship, Captain Vec broadcast his voice across the city, harsh and full of rage. "Kyrians, your resistance is finished. Lay down your arms, hand over the humans, and maybe we will spare you. Refuse, and we will burn your world." The message echoed through the capital. For a moment, silence reigned. Fear crept into every heart. Children clung to their parents, counselors trembled, and even the strongest Kyrians felt the weight of despair. But then Captain Morgan Hale stepped forward. Her voice carried across the barricades and rooftops, steady and clear. Do not listen to their threats. You are not alone anymore. We stand with you. Together, we will not break. Her words cut through the fear like light through fog. The Kyrians straightened their backs. The humans raised their weapons. Across the city, a single thought spread. We will fight. The raiders struck at dawn. Shuttles poured from the sky. Hundreds of mercenaries storming through the streets with weapons blazing. Explosions rocked the barricades. Smoke filled the air, and the ground shook with every impact. The raiders came in endless waves, confident that sheer numbers would crush the defenders. But the defenders were ready. From rooftops, Kyrian archers fired arrows tipped with human-made explosives. From alleyways, traps sprang up, sending flames and debris into advancing squads. Barricades held firm, reinforced with stone and steel, and wherever the raiders broke through, humans rushed to meet them head-on. The humans fought like storms, given shape. They moved with brutal efficiency, every strike measured, every step unyielding. Their bodies bled, their armor cracked, yet they pressed forward without hesitation. For them, retreat was never an option. Beside them, the Kyrians fought with a new fire. The blacksmith Errol swung his hammer like thunder, driving raiders back with every blow. Illyra, the singer, carried a spear and shouted commands to her people, her voice steady even amid chaos. Farmers, merchants, and artisans all became warriors that day, their fear replaced by fierce determination. At the heart of the battle, Morgan commanded with sharp precision, hold the east barricade, reinforce the south, push them back to the square. Her words carried through smoke and fire, anchoring the defenders. Even as raider forces pressed harder, even as their numbers seemed endless, the defenders did not break. The raiders expected weakness. Instead, they met unity. Captain Vec watched from orbit, his rage boiling as reports poured in. Every wave he sent was pushed back. His mercenaries whispered of humans who would not die, who fought with smiles on their faces even when wounded. Fear spread through his ranks like poison. Cowards, Vec roared. Crush them. Use everything we have. And so the raiders unleashed their final weapon, a massive orbital strike. From the sky, beams of fire lanced down, scorching the outskirts of the city. Entire blocks collapsed in flames. Panic threatened to rise once more. But Morgan's voice rang out above it. Stay together. Stay low. Their fire cannot break your spirit. The humans guided civilians into shelters, dragging the wounded with them. Kyrians shielded children with their own bodies. Though the city burned, the people did not scatter. Instead, their anger grew. When the next raider wave landed, they faced not a broken colony, but a united one. Humans and Kyrians surged forward, together, striking with fury. The battle spilled into the main square, the same place where fear had once ruled. Now it was filled with defiance. Sergeant Ortiz fought at the front, his roar echoing as he drove raiders back with sheer willpower. Drew, the quiet singer, turned his rifle into a spear when ammo ran dry, refusing to yield. Even the youngest. Kyrian scouts darted through the chaos, carrying messages, guiding fighters, and striking when they could. The raiders faltered, their confidence cracked. For every Kyrian they tried to break, a human stood in their way. For every human who fell, a Kyrian rushed to shield them. The bond between the two peoples was no longer fragile. It was unbreakable. At last, the defenders pushed the raiders back to the edge of the square. Smoke curled into the sky, bodies littered the ground, and the air reeked of ash and sweat. Still, the raiders refused to flee. Then, with a roar of engines, the human ship Resolute rose into the air. Its patched hull gleamed in the firelight, its cannons primed. The ship unleashed its full arsenal, tearing into the raider shuttles above. Explosions painted the sky as metal rained down. The sight shattered raider morale. One by one, they broke ranks, fleeing toward their remaining shuttles. Fear of the Deathworlders gripped them harder than their captain's threats. From the flagship, Vex screamed in rage, but his fleet wavered. His officers, shaken by the humans' defiance, refused to descend into the slaughter. At last, with curses and fury, Vec gave the order to retreat. The raider ships pulled away, engines flaring as they vanished into the stars. Silence fell. The Kyrians stood in the ruins of their city, trembling, covered in dust and blood, but alive. Slowly, cheers rose. Weak at first, then louder, until the entire capital rang with victory. Humans leaned on their weapons, exhausted, but smiling faintly. Kyrians embraced them, tears streaming down their faces. Children clung to them as if to family. Elder Rhinal stepped forward, his voice breaking as he spoke. "You saved us when no one else would. We will never forget this." Morgan shook her head. "We didn't save you. You saved yourselves. We only reminded you of your strength." Her words spread through the crowd, sinking deep into every heart. The Kyrians realized she was right. They were no longer helpless traitors. They were survivors, fighters, protectors of their home. That night, fires burned again in the city, but this time they were fires of celebration. Food was shared, songs rose, and laughter returned. Humans and Kyrians sat side by side, no longer strangers but allies. Young Lyra, sitting beside Morgan, whispered, "Will you leave us now?" Morgan smiled gently. "Someday, but not until we know you're safe." The girl nodded, comforted. To her, the humans were not just Deathworlders anymore. They were family. Across the galaxy, word spread quickly. The Kyrians' plea had been ignored by the great empires, but it had been answered by those from the most dangerous world in known space. Stories traveled from system to system. When all others turned away, the Deathworlders came. And everywhere those stories spread, hope followed. Because now, the galaxy knew, if the Deathworlders stood with you, you would never stand alone.